last week, you will have heard that 5 BJP-ruled states are planning to bring in laws to deal with the scourge of love jihad. Now, given that we're now talking about laws being brought in place here to deal with this concept, we have to ask 2 big questions. 1, is there any real legal basis for any of this? And 2, what is this really about? So let's start with question 1. What is the legal basis for it? If you're going to define an offense, you're going to create a law, you're going to punish something, you have to have a definition of it. Whereas when it comes to love jihad, we still don't have any definition of it. And even the BJP basically has admitted they don't. In the central government, when it comes to the parliamentary questions, they've admitted in the Lok Sabha there is no such concept of love jihad under Indian laws, and their central agencies have found no evidence of any such phenomenon. The attempts to get the NIA to investigate this in Kerala, Karnataka have fallen flat. The UPSC probing this, many of their cases have already been closed because they found relationships were just consensual. And even the National Commission for Women, whose head was talking about rising cases of love jihad recently, has also insisted that they don't have any data. So what is this whole concept? Now, we know the dog whistle idea, which is that Muslim men are trying to woo Hindu women and then take them over to Islam, but that's not something which you can legally define. So what you see, therefore, in these proposals for love jihad laws in UP and in Madhya Pradesh is a focus on what they are first terming as forced conversions, but then when you delve into the law, is a whole questioning of anyone converting, whether it's for the sake of marriage or otherwise. And in particular, it's this thing of saying that if anyone converts for the sake of marriage, now that is illegal, and it's definitely going to be a forced conversion, and such marriages have to be declared null and void. That's what these laws are seeking to do. Now, you've got to ask yourself 2 questions at this point. One is, what is the need for any such law? And 2, is any of this constitutional? Now, in terms of the need for such a law, well, the answer actually is no. If you're looking at any genuine case of forced conversion, of someone being harassed into changing their religion, that's already covered under the offense of criminal intimidation in the Indian Penal Code. Now, this offense punishes anyone forcing you to do something which you're not legally bound to do. And the basic punishment for this is 2 years in jail. And if you're actually threatening someone, you're threatening their life, you're threatening them with grievous hurt, you're threatening them with damage to their property, to attacks on their family, then the punishment goes up to 7 years, which is actually even more than what the BJP and all are proposing in their laws, which is a 5-year jail term for all of this. Now, if we look at some states even have anti-conversion laws already, like Madhya Pradesh. So the fact that they're saying, we now need a new law, which will also not really refer to love jihad, but is actually about love jihad, just shows you how much of a sham all of this is. Now, that's sort of the basic terms of what you need. Now, what about the constitutional aspect? If you're going to go beyond, like what the UP ordinance seeks to do, is say that any case like this where a person is converting for the sake of marriage only will be considered illegal. Any marriage which follows from such a conversion can be declared null and void by a family court without any of without the couple complaining, but just the third party. It could be the family or some other aggrieved person from the community. They can all file complaints and get a marriage declared null and void. Now, this is a vast overreach on people's rights to privacy, on their right to practice religion, because let's take it like this. If you or I want to change our religion, we can do it without anyone asking us a question. The state or the government or the courts, nobody has a right to interfere with this. Not your family, not your local community either. So why should this be the case if it comes to a question of marriage? Well, you're saying, what about sham conversions for marriage? They don't really want to. Well, there are actually very good reasons to do it. Look at the Special Marriage Act. This is supposed to be what you will use for an interfaith marriage, but the Special Marriage Act requires a 30-day notice period, which allows harassment, which allows threats to the couple, intimidation of the couple. So many couples just say, you know what, let's avoid the hassle. One of us converts, we have a same religion marriage, it gets done, it's all over. And people have a right to do that. Your right to privacy includes a right to decisional autonomy. The Supreme Court, a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court has held this. And your right to practice your religion, your profess of faith, all of that also comes into play. So what really is the problem here? Well, now you have them trying to say, oh, look, the Allahabad High Court recently held this. There was a recent September order which said conversions for the sake of marriage are illegal. Well, number one, that Allahabad High Court judgment isn't a precedent for that, because that judgment doesn't make any ruling or finding on this issue. It only makes an observation about that when refusing to give protection to a couple, an interfaith couple, which had approached them for help, which was also problematic. But it's not a ruling. Even if we consider it to have some precedential value, well, again, no, because it's based on a misreading of a Supreme Court judgment, the 2006 Lily Thomas case. Now, in that, the Supreme Court said that if you are converting for the sake of marriage, in a very particular circumstance that was illegal, and that was where you had a Hindu man converting to Islam so that he could marry a second woman, who was also Hindu, by the way, while not having to bother with his obligations to his first wife and the divorce proceedings which were going on there. Now, this was clearly, therefore, a workaround to commit the crime of bigamy, and therefore the court said that this was not a valid conversion. So that is what the context was behind that judgment. The Allahabad High Court has completely ignored that. So when you've got a situation where there's neither a need for this and where any such law is actually overreaching and violating the constitution, this takes us back to the second question. What is this all about? And what this is really about is dividing communities. It's about saying that one community has to be looked at with suspicion and looked at as lesser, and we have to protect our people from them. And when you do that, it makes it much easier to enable hatred and discrimination. And that's again what's really at play here. The parallels with these laws are the Nuremberg laws in Nazi Germany, the anti-miscegenation laws in the US, which used to prevent blacks and whites from being able to get married, the apartheid era laws of South Africa. That's what the tradition is here, because this is exactly what these laws back then used to do. Sure, this one doesn't necessarily prohibit marriage, but the effect is still the same, and the objective was what those laws were all about. It wasn't just about prohibiting marriage, it was about creating this kind of discriminatory conditions. If we look at, for instance, the way the Nazi Germany, the Nuremberg law there, the second Nuremberg law which dealt with this, was used to catch even people who weren't actively professing a Jewish faith. As long as they had some degree in their past of Jewish ancestry, they were still considered Jews. So the idea was to target a community. If you're looking at the US laws, they used to say that even though the law prohibited an African American from marrying a white woman, if a person was from Honduras or Haiti, the law was still being used against them. So what we know at this point is that these laws don't really have any legal basis. And what we're seeing is really an attempt to just sort of discriminate and divide even further.